Resident Evil remakes, well, mostly Resident Evil 3, gets a pretty hard time. And so making a video on frustrations from them, I thought it'd be just a bit too easy. Like, where did Jill get that gun holster from?
Sorry.
I much prefer the original titles.
Let's get moving.
Jill, put this on.
But they're not perfect. So I thought I'll give you some of my frustrations from them instead. Welcome back to the world of survival horror. When I'm looking at the original trilogy of games, and I'm including Zero in that too, well, I suppose that doesn't really make it a trilogy, does it? More like a quadruple? It's very easy just to point out the obvious ones. Tank controls, fixed camera angles, and for many, yes, they are very frustrating. But to me, they're brilliant. They add suspense, they add intrigue. And so I've picked out 5 other times, maybe 6. I've picked out 6 other times the original Resident Evil games really frustrated me. Resident Evil 0 wanted to be innovative. It wanted to feel like the first Resident Evil game, but just not a big complete clone of it. So they did take some things away. They took away the 2-story element and had 2 protagonists instead, ones that you could switch between on a whim. And they kept the feel of the mansion by having the training center built in the same design. The one thing they did take away though was the item box. This magic box can store all of your items and you can pick them up from any box, anywhere in the game. Instead, they just allowed you to place things on the floor. Can't pick up that shotgun ammo because your inventory is too full? Don't worry, you don't have to wade through all those zombies you've missed just to get back to the item box, drop a few things off so that you can go back and pick it up. Nope. Just drop off what you don't need right there on the floor and pick up what you do. Sounds great, doesn't it? Well, in theory. Now, I don't know about you, but with the main hall being the safest spot and quite central, it became my dumping ground for all my gear, which again is quite fine when you're in the train facility. So when you move out of the training facility and your gear is still all there, you realise you've left the hookshot. You can't just pop to the nearest item box and grab it. You've got to go all the way back to the start of the game. It was a fun idea. I did like it, but it's not very practical. Yes, we know it's a bit more realistic that you can just put things down in real life that you don't want and just pick up something else. But the items aren't going to magically travel between boxes, but it's just a gameplay mechanic. It's a suspension of disbelief, and I'd rather have much preferred to spend 30 seconds to go to the nearest item box than the next 5 to 10 minutes running from one end of the map to the other and going through all those tedious loading screens. Back in the day when the first Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was released, you were filled with dread the moment you hear that iconic STARS cry.
Stars.
Nemesis was like Mr. X on steroids. He was fast, he was quick, and if you did manage to get some distance between him, he put out a massive rocket launcher. I mean, come on, that's the sort of thing that you used to beat the end of the level boss, and now he's firing it at you. But what was worse about Nemesis is when he grabbed hold of you. You had to bash the buttons as hard as you could possibly can to wriggle out, and if you did, that was fine, great. But if not, he'll knock you to the floor. And he kind of knocks the wind out of you or something, because then you've got to bash the buttons to get back up again. And all he seems to do was just pick you up and kill you. I can remember breaking so many control pads in the process, not only just trying to bash the buttons, but then get really frustrated and launching it across the room. It was such an unfair mechanic, because you were completely, well, in a sense, stun locked. He could just pick you up again and use his tentacle thing on you. I mean, there was a dodge mechanic, but again, it was kind of random. I mean, it happens, there's no way of actually manually doing it. You seem to have to almost fire your gun at the very exact point that you're about to get hit, and then Jill will just do this side dodge. But it was so random, you had to be completely lucky with it. You just seem to go shoot, 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 and then all of a sudden you just dodge out of the way. And it could happen like 2 or 3 times in a row with the Nemesis. I've seen that happen. Resident Evil is known for its quirky little puzzles, and they work really well in the mansion, because it was all about finding the keys for different rooms. And the mansion was designed as a massive puzzle box, and they carried it on quite well. They actually implemented it quite well into future games. Resident Evil 2 was a former museum designed by the same person that built the Spencer Mansion. And Resident Evil 3, being set more out in the open city, then incorporated puzzles into more of the actual environments, such as opening the park gates or setting fire to some rope once you've covered it in lighter fluid. But there were a couple of puzzles that just really annoy me. The water treatment puzzle, it's here you get these little bar things that you've got to match up with the top bar things. It's just really tedious because you can have it almost perfect, and then there'll be one little white bar that just doesn't quite match up. I mean, it's a good puzzle, and I'll give them that. It's been very thought out, and it makes sense in context to the game. But yeah, it's so frustrating that just trying to match up the sounds. The second is the clock thing with the gemstones. Now, with every other puzzle that I can think of, you can work it out. There's some kind of logic to it. The game gives you clues on how to solve it. Take the painting, for example. A small quote from The Life and Times of a Man, and as you look at the pictures, you can see it's about a man growing up. Therefore, you push the painting switches in order from birth to death, and boom, the puzzle is solved. The music box just needs the sounds to tune in, and so you switch the sounds until they sound right. These gemstones have no clue. Yes, granted, it's obvious you need to drop them in the little tray, but in what order? Remember, when this game was released, the internet was only just being born. You couldn't just pop along to IGN or Game FAQs and get the answer. It's assumed that you know what order they're formed in, but me not being the slightest bit interested in gemstones have absolutely no idea what came first, the amber or obsidian. And in fact, to this day, I still don't know what comes first. I just guess until I get it right. Maybe I should actually look at that one day. Anyway, a silly puzzle that just relies on guesswork. I'm quite fond of Resident Evil 0, even with its character breaking story, magic elevator, and lack of item boxes, as mentioned before. I do quite actually like it, honestly. But there is one enemy I can't stand, and that's the stupid jumpy monkeys. I thought the Cerberus were bad enough being able to move quickly and jump at you, but my goodness, they were not a patch on these evil. Hardly ever stay still long enough for you to shoot them, constantly jumping around, and there's always so many of them. The part where you have to save Rebecca from falling to her death, they put monkeys in the way. Of all the enemies to face, when you're against the clock, it's just mean. The Hunters are an amazing enemy, crafted by grafting reptilian DNA onto a human donor egg and then using the T-virus as a bonding agent. The result is this crocodile-skinned, human-sized frog beast thing. One of the most terrifying bioweapons Umbrella ever created, and incidentally, one of the most successful. They are agile, tough, and one of the hardest enemies you face. I remember seeing that FMB for the first time and wondering what on earth was going on, and to this day it still scares the crap out of me. Even now, I know what to expect. The gameplay switches up, the zombies are replaced with hunters, and you better have saved your magnum ammo or your shotgun ammo because you're going to need it. But it's their one-hit kills that's frustrating. They jump around, making it harder to shoot them, and then if they get behind you, it's like bam, your head's removed from your body, regardless of how much health you have. Don't get me wrong, it's a great move, and I love they have the ability to do it. But when they start jumping around, panic steps in. Shots get fired into walls, doors, floors, magnum rounds are wasted in the blind hope one of them doesn't take your head off. You might not have saved for a while or been doing a no save run, and then all of a sudden, it's game over. Resident Evil's story is quite frustrating for the simple fact that there's no true canon to it. Take Resident Evil 1 for example. Rebecca only shows up in Chris's story, Barry only shows up in Jill's story, and yet both of them survived the mansion, and yet both of them can't be seen in the helicopter at the same time. I get that having one kind of set story limits the replayability, but would it have been that difficult just to have Barry inside the prison with Jill and Rebecca inside the prison with Chris? They wouldn't need to change the game around in any form. You could still have the gameplay set out exactly the same if you're playing Chris's story or Jill's story. It's just that last few minutes to tie everything together so it doesn't really matter whose side you play, is that all of them get out together. It's the same with Resident Evil 2. It's accepted canon that Claire A and Leon B, but there are instances from from Leon A and Claire B that's referenced throughout the titles, although they did a far better job of telling the same story from two different perspectives in Resident Evil 2. And although the story has to have a lot of headcanon in order for it to make sense, I suppose in some way we don't really need to get that bogged down in the detail. Capcom are quite happy to have the broad strokes of canon, but that is for another video. And if you want to know more about it, well, then you need to watch the video that's on screen now. Thanks for watching, don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you survivors next time.